Good morning, everyone, and welcome. My name is Renee Hancock, and I'm the CEO of the Les Twentyman Foundation. I'd like to begin our event today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Today especially, we acknowledge the challenges that Indigenous girls and women face on a daily basis, but we also celebrate their strength, resilience, and incredible potential. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Les Twentyman Foundation, our work was founded by well-known and respected youth worker Les Twentyman more than 30 years ago. We believe that every child and young person, regardless of their gender, economic circumstances, or cultural background, deserves an equal opportunity in life. We work with youth across Greater Melbourne who need additional support to stay engaged with their education, families, and communities, building hope and helping to create brighter futures for themselves and their families. Before we start, I'd like to say thank you to the Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Community Sport and Youth, the Honourable Ros Spence, who isn't able to attend today, but has recorded this message a little earlier. Let's hear what the Minister has to say about International Day of the Girl.
Hi everyone, I'm Ros Spence, Victoria's Minister for Multicultural Affairs, Community Sport and Youth. Thank you to the Les Twentyman Foundation and your CEO, Renee Hancock, for inviting me to celebrate International Day of the Girl with you. Today gives us an opportunity to acknowledge and celebrate the invaluable contribution that girls and young women make to our community. Now more than ever, we need to elevate the voices of girls and young women and listen to what they have to say, because they are already leaders among their communities. They are at the forefront of movements for change and challenging the status quo. This year, the theme of International Day of the Girl is My Voice, Our Equal Future. The diverse and inspiring young women from the Embrace Leadership program embody this theme. Among you are amazing young women from diverse backgrounds who have overcome challenges, biases, dangers and injustices, and who are realising their full potential. I'm excited to hear about the leadership journey that each of the Embrace participants has been on over the last 2 years. Congratulations to the Les Twentyman Foundation for your great work, and to each of you who have taken part in the Embrace program. And happy International Day of the Girl to every girl and young woman out there. Your voice is special and unique. You deserve to be listened to, be heard, empowered and celebrated. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you to Minister Ros Spence for taking the time to record that message. You may be interested to know that the Minister has recently announced a new youth strategy for Victoria, which provides young people with a unique opportunity to shape and inform a vision for the future. It's an absolute pleasure to be here with you to celebrate and acknowledge the International Day of the Girl, which is held annually on the 11th of October. This day aims to promote girls' empowerment and fulfilment of their human rights, while also acknowledging the challenges that girls face all over the world. At the Les Twentyman Foundation, more than 70% of the young people we work with are girls and young women. Our flagship personal development program, Embrace, has around 30 young people annually from diverse backgrounds, and it takes them through a unique experience of self-discovery, building their confidence, self-esteem, and leadership capabilities. This event today will elevate and embrace young women's voices on the issues that are important to them, the young women from our Embrace program. Embrace is proudly supported by the Joe White Bequest. Joe White was a businessman who was very active in the communities of Ballarat and Torquay, and later in Melbourne. He died in Brighton at the age of 86 having grown his business, Joe White Maltings, to become Australia's largest malting company. The Joe White Bequest was created to ensure a continuing legacy of community contribution, and it is through this generosity that we are able to offer the Embrace program. The ripple effects of Embrace are amazing. It has positive impacts on families, communities, and peers. And research shows that participants self-report positive changes in managing their emotions, making healthy choices, feeling safe, and building their self-confidence. I'm delighted to be joined by 4 young women who have been involved in our Embrace program as participants, mentors, and in many ways, ambassadors. We also may have another young woman join us a little later in the session. I'd like to welcome Azza Juma, who is currently studying Year 12 and is planning to study criminal law at university next year.
Hi.
Hello, Azza. Next, I'd like to welcome Jazia Baz, who is a strong advocate for women's rights and is currently studying mental health at university. Hi, Jazzy. Our next guest is Pep Amitua Nahi, whose experience of Embrace has led her to pursuing a career in human resources.
Hi. Hi, everyone.
Hello, Pep. And we also have with us Courtney Hall, who is working in early childhood education after a career in the male-dominated construction industry. Hi, Courtney.
Hey, how are you?
A big welcome to everyone on our panel and for taking the time to join us to celebrate International Day of the Girl. We're also aiming to take some questions from the audience this morning. So if you have a question, please type it into the Q&A box on your screen and we'll check in on those questions a little later. So I'll start by saying that all of you are connected to each other and the Les Twentyman Foundation through our Embrace Leadership Development Program. Pep, can you tell us a little bit about the program and your experiences of it? How did it help you to find your voice?
So I started the program a while ago, back in 2011. But when I started, I was quite skeptical because a leader was the last word I would have used to describe myself, because I was very shy, very quiet, and I was afraid to speak my own mind. However, overall, the Embrace program really pushed me out of my boundaries within a supportive environment, with the full support of my mentors and peers who I still remain connected to this day. But honestly, the biggest highlights of the programs were the camps, especially the survival camps. It was like a love-hate sort of thing, because we had to do things like icebergers, where they forced us to wake up at 5:30 in the morning to jump in a freezing cold lake in the dead of winter. And then after that, we'd go on an endless hike. And then I decided it was a good idea to swim in a freezing cold lake, and nearly got hypothermia because the icebergers weren't enough apparently. And if that wasn't challenging enough, I also did a solo challenge, which is when they would blindfold me and then drop me off in a random location by myself in the middle of the night, and then expect me to survive until they decide to pick me up, which I do not know when. And all I had was a notebook, a pen, 3 oranges, and 1 toilet paper roll. And that time I was quite the horror movie fanatic, so that was quite the worst situation I could be in, but I survived and I came out stronger. And it's through experience such as these and bonding with my peers and mentors that really built my character, that really built my confidence in myself. And especially the support from my peers and mentors, because everyone was treated equally. They wanted us to speak because everyone was valuable. So I felt empowered by everything that I learned through the Embrace program, and empowered by the support that I knew I had from my mentors and my peers. Hence, I finally found my voice and why I'm able to speak to you all today.
Oh, that's great, Pep. We're so pleased that you have found your voice, because we know that many people want to listen to young women like you. Courtney, I'm going to move to you now, because we're going to talk about how you've embraced your voice as well. You spent a large part of your career working in a male-dominated industry that would be quite intimidating for many young women. How did you embrace your voice in that sector, and can you tell us about your experiences working there?
Yeah, so I worked in traffic management, and I also worked with my dad's business, which was in power tools and construction supply. So it was dealing with tradies and engineers and all of these different people who, you know, run big building sites and all that kind of thing. And it can be very intimidating, but I was really lucky to have my dad teach me at a really young age that I had a power that not everybody has. He didn't have it, and my brother didn't have it, but my mum had it, my grandmother had it, my grandmothers, my aunties, and it was the power of being a girl, of being a female. And he taught me to be aware of it and to know, you know, that it is there, and to use it to be strong, and to not, you know, let myself feel vulnerable when I didn't need to, and feel like I was less than when I never needed to feel that way. So I was really lucky that I was able to learn that really young and harness that in that industry, especially, like, you know, there's sometimes there's comments that are not appropriate, but you just have to say, hey, not okay with that, don't do it again. And if you do it again, then these are the things that I'm going to do to make sure you don't do it again. And every time it was stopped, like then and there. It was always, I set my boundaries, and it was always going to be, that's it, don't do it again. Simple as that. So I was really lucky in that sense.
Thanks, Courtney. Another consistent experience for all of you is growing up in the western suburbs of Melbourne. And Jazzy, I'm wondering if you can share with us a little bit about growing up in the West. I know that you and some of your friends at school experienced some issues going to and from school when you're around 15 years of age. Can you tell us about those experiences and how it's shaped you as a person?
Yeah, I'll talk about what used to happen. So our schools and our houses all used to be fairly close to each other. So we would just walk everywhere we had to. And we often, like, it wasn't more often than not, but it happened quite a fair bit, enough for us to remember that there were people on the street who would just like harass us. They would follow us. They would really try to talk to us. Even when we did stand up to them and try to say no, like Courtney said, our boundaries were crossed every single time it happened. Like, there were many instances where girls would come to school crying, or they would come to, like, we'd go to each other's houses, because we'd be on the way to each other's houses after school or before school even, and they would just show up like hysterical. There were other instances where I've personally had to hide into random people's front yards because cars were following me, and I just have to wait it out. And in that instance, I don't know where the safety is, because it's a random house and there's a car outside waiting for me, so I'm in a bit like of a rut there in itself. Yeah, and we just have a lot of guys that were just out on the street just calling out all sorts of things. So in a sense, it made us a lot stronger and more vocal, because we had to yell out in order to stop it. Like, we couldn't really approach it in any other way. We couldn't pull the guys aside and be like, hey, what you're doing is wrong, it's not nice, because we were in like such severe danger. Like, it could have gone either way. So we too had to sort of like toughen up, but in a very odd way, I guess.
And have those experiences, Jazzy, made you more aware of violence against women and more of an advocate to end violence against women?
incredibly. The only thing it really did was just show how prevalent it is and how close it is to like myself in particular. But yeah, with I guess it's always a lot easier to know that there is a real issue when you see it for yourself and when you experience it yourself. And that is really what happened for not only me, but for all the women close to me growing up.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to move on to Azza now, because Azza is currently studying Year 12, and Year 12 is really supposed to be one of the best years of your life. It's definitely a year of hard work and lots of study, but it's also a time to enjoy the rites of passage that come at the end of your high school education. Azza, can you tell us what it's been like studying Year 12 during a global pandemic?
Yeah, it's been quite difficult and stressful, but it's because like I'm not in control of what's going on. However, through programs like the Les 20 Foundation, I've been able to stay connected with everyone, which has given me the strength to push through the year. Also, sometimes I've been less motivated to complete work and like keep up with schoolwork. However, I'd like remind myself what my goals are and what I'd like to achieve like through the end of Year 12, which is giving me that extra motivation and strength to get through the year. More so, like everyone's going through the pandemic, which I'd like to remind everyone that you're not alone. Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Thanks, Azza. Pep, you had some difficult experiences in those later years of your secondary education as well. Can you tell us a little bit about what was happening at the time for you and how you managed to get through it?
Yeah, sure, of course. So I was struggling with VCE, in particular, the pressures of deciding my future, because at that moment, it felt like you only had one chance, and like that moment decided your future. I felt like that was really perpetuated during my school years. So it made me stress a lot. But what made it harder for me though was the high expectations I had placed upon me from my family, my parents, like people around me, my teachers, and even myself, to the point that I couldn't differentiate between what they wanted and what I really wanted in life. So I ended up having like a mental breakdown because I could no longer cope with trying to please everyone, especially trying to please my parents, who I really wanted to make them proud, because they immigrated here with nothing and they worked so hard to ensure that me and my brother had the future that they didn't have. So I always had that constant dilemma with like, whose dream do I want to follow? So, to the point that it was like mixed, and I could no longer figure out which one was which. But however, I was able to get through this through some like school counseling, like my church group, finally having the courage to be honest and speaking about it to my parents, about my feelings and what I wanted. That was probably the hardest part, because in my culture, like there's a lot of emphasis on like family and like obeying your parents, which is good, but then like sometimes it blurs the line between what I wanted and like what they wanted. But most importantly, what really helped, especially talking to my parents, was the Embrace program, and Jim, who's one of my main mentors, because I had to ask him for help to reassure them that like it's going to be fine, that even though I'm not doing the path that they initially wanted, like there's still a bright future ahead of me. And but in saying that, I was still quite lost on what to do, because I was so scared. I was like, I didn't want to get it wrong, and I thought there was only so much options. But luckily, at one of the Embrace workshops, there was a guest speaker who was a HR manager, and she opened my eyes to human resource management, inspiring me. She inspired me. That was really wrong grammar, but like, sorry. She just really inspired me by how she worked. She used her job in HR to help the employees, to help like their mental health, ensure that their rights were being met, like they weren't being ignored, that their voices were being heard. So I decided to pursue HR, even though I didn't know what it was back then. But so recently I just graduated with a degree in commerce in HR. So hopefully that goes well, see what the world has to offer. But I wanted to share that story in particular because the program really opened my eyes to the fact that there is so much out there in this world. We had so many guest speakers from all different walks of life, and it weren't the typical ones that we were used to at school. Like, they addressed like taboo subjects that you wouldn't really address in school, because like weren't really ready to go into that controversy. But it really helped, and I wanted to share that because I know how daunting it is during VCE, especially year 12. But I wanted to share that your future is in your hands. In the end, you're the one that's going to be living out that dream. So ensure that it's your own. Like, yes, it's important to like listen to your family and friends, but there should be this understanding that like it's your life, that there's no point of pursuing something that is not your own. And what's important is your future can change. I think that was most important, because for me, it was just set. It was just set, but like it can change, and that's okay. But what's important is having the right people, the right support around you, and knowing that like they're there for you no matter what. So it's going to be okay, year 12s. You'll be okay. No, turn that one.
I actually have something to add to being in year 12 as a female, because as you said, like your future was set, and you thought you only had one path to go down.
Yeah.
When I was in year 12 particularly, we had a lot of trouble with females wanting to do things that weren't typically suited for females. Like, they wanted to venture out into doing like any sort of trade, or they wanted to go to hairdressing school. They wanted to do things that weren't like studious.
Yeah.
They didn't want to read literature. They didn't want to go get a degree, and it wasn't for them. However, at school, the teachers were always like, no, but that's not a thing for you. Like, you're a girl. Why don't you want to go do this? Why don't you want to do that? But in the end, it was hard to determine, again, like you said, whose dream you were trying to follow. But when you're so young and you're not so sure, it's even more difficult, because you're like, I don't know, and these people are older than me, and they might know better for me, they might know more, whatever. There's a lot of conflict, but it doesn't help when your teachers are not being supportive and they're almost being very sexist in your very classroom. It makes it very difficult to make decisions for yourself when the people who you're supposed to take advice from, to learn from, who are supposed to teach you things, are telling you that you can't or you shouldn't do things because you're a girl and it's not right for you. That's a male's job. That's a man's field. There's no women there. What are you thinking about doing going into it? So yeah.
Thanks, Jazzy. That's a really important message for all the young women out there that are listening today, to follow your dreams and not somebody else's dreams. A big congratulations to Pep on finishing her degree. I'm sure that's been difficult in the year of a pandemic and lockdown as well, with lots of studying online. I know, Courtney, you had some difficult experiences at school as well, and changed schools when you were in secondary school. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about that.
So I went to a private school from year 7 to year 10, and I was not very academically inclined. It was more so that I wasn't interested in sitting there with, my head in a book, and I was always more hands-on. So I loved like art classes, to be creative, and I really struggled with kind of building friendships and relationships with mainly the girls that I went to school with. So I've always kind of struggled connecting with other girls. And only in my later years, have I kind of learnt how to do that and learnt not to be so self-conscious. I think changing schools was a huge thing. So I ended up changing for year 11 and 12 to finish VCE. And went to a public school, and I had friends from my primary school at that public high school. So it was, it changed. I finished year 12, and I never thought that I would do that. And that was never something that I strived to do. To be fair, I didn't really need to finish year 12 because of I didn't really have any aspirations to be anyone specific or do anything specific. So I found that later in life. that I wanted to work with children, and I love it, and that's the best thing that I've ever done. So I think just making sure that you are sharing how you feel. And if you, like I said to my mum and dad, I don't want to go back to that school. Please don't make me go back. And they were like, immediately they were like, okay, we can't force her to go back. That's clearly not what she wants. So if she wants to go to a public school, let's send her to the school that she wants to go to. And it was a complete 180 from where I was to where I ended up. I would have, if I stayed at that private school, I would have skipped classes even more. I would have gotten in more trouble at school, and it would have been really detrimental to my mental health. So yeah, I'm really grateful that my parents listened to me and were understanding that it wasn't going to be better for me to continue at that school, and to let me make my own choices as to what I was going to do with my education. So yeah, I'm really grateful for that.
Thanks, Courtney. I also want to ask you, Courtney, a little bit about your experiences during this pandemic. This lockdown has been hard for everyone in many ways. And I know that you had a very different experience between the first lockdown in Melbourne and the second lockdown. And I'm wondering if you can share with us what was happening for you at the time and how you changed your perspective the second time in lockdown.
Yeah, so the first lockdown, I was living at home with my mum and dad, and I'd been living at home for quite a while, but I had those freedoms of being able to leave the house and go and be social with other people other than my immediate family, and just being able to find my own space within the home, because we were all stuck at home. So we were all looking for some kind of connection, and I became really overwhelmed and had what we would call a nervous breakdown. And I just didn't know what was going on. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to say, I don't know what is going on and I need help. And so my parents contacted Jim, as Pep mentioned before, and Jim was really aware of how to support my mum and dad to be able to support me, and I went and saw a psychiatrist and sorted myself out. And then the second lockdown was completely different. So because I had experienced a lockdown before, I had something to work from. I had something to base my future decisions off. And so this lockdown, I was motivated and I got a job, full-time job, and I moved out. And and I've been really, really, thank you. And I've been really, really, really lucky. And I'm really lucky that I live so close to my parents. They're within my 5K radius. So I'm lucky that, I still have them to see and visit, and it's been a really, really positive experience this lockdown, especially compared to the last one.
That's really good to hear, Courtney. I'm just going through some of the questions that are coming through in the Q&A box, and there's a question here that's quite interesting about relationships with your fathers. Would any of you like to share some insights into the relationships that you have with your dad or father-like figures in your life? And what advice would you give to dads out there that have daughters or stepdaughters?
I saw that cheeky question in the Q&A box. Okay, I can start.
Thanks, Jazzy.
A present father in a girl's life is her very first love. So what you do, and as a father, what you do and how you treat your young daughter will determine how she chooses to live her life in terms of romantic relationships or relationship with people. Actually, how she chooses to treat people will reflect in your will be a reflection of your relationship with your daughter. I personally, after some good long healing and unlearning, have a very good relationship with my father. I always did have one when I was younger, actually, but then, as you know, you get a little bit older and you start to develop your own views on the world, and sometimes they can be a little bit conflicting. So with a lot of tender, loving care, the relationship is able to bloom into something bigger and better. So that's where I'm at. And some advice is just to be maybe gentle and considerate. I don't know.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what Jazzy says. Father figures are important because it does determine like your outlook on men and I guess relationships. I was fortunate my dad was quite a softie. It's my mum who's the complete opposite, and yeah, which was good because my mum was she's an empowered woman, and because my dad's a softie, like she let him be. But then for me, it was good for me because I know how I should be treated. Because like my dad listened to what my mom said. He didn't like try to stop her, and like the same with me. So I never felt like I had to compromise. Like I had to compromise for like other men out there, and or that I was less important because he would always listen.
Yeah, actually that's a good point. As a daughter with a present father, what he does in his everyday life, even just the little things, really sets the bar. So if the man in the house, the father, is setting the bar really low, then the bar will be set low for the woman, for the young girl to grow into a woman. And unless she does some really hard yard learning on her own, she'll submit to all the negative things that she carried from her relationship with her father. Unfortunately, it takes a lot. But if you are choosing to take the role of being the man of the house, then I think it's very important, or not necessarily the man of the house, but like if you're going to choose to be an important person in someone's life, like being their father figure, then you have to set the bar really high, and you have to be cautious of, not so much cautious, but you have to be aware of your actions, even the way you use your words and what words you use, because even the little things are really going to set the standards.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My dad's not a man of many words, but it's the actions that speak louder than words. So like my advice would probably be like, think like about what you're doing, like even the small things like your expressions, and like maybe like ignoring, like if you're ignoring what they're saying just because you're busy, like it could have an impact. So like just the little things sometimes make a difference.
Courtney, I've seen you nodding, Courtney, and I'm interested to hear from you. I'm sure the audience would be too.
So I am really lucky. So I've had a relationship with my dad that has been explosive and loving and insane, I think I would describe it, because we are exactly the same. As much as I don't like to admit that out loud, we are exactly the same, and I definitely am my father's daughter, and my mum tells me that all the time. And I think it's been explosive in terms of we have struggled with the communication with one another, especially I'm very open and I'm very honest about how I feel, and it's really difficult sometimes for all men of kind of my dad's age to really talk about how they feel, because it's not what they did growing up. Like it's a generational thing, and talking about your emotions and talking about how certain experiences have affected you has been probably one thing that I wish was more kind of a part of our relationship. And self-reflection is really hard to do. And so I hope that for all the dads to be, current dads, grandfathers, uncles, I think to be able to talk about how you feel with the women around you and be honest about it. Don't put on a front. Don't pretend that you're okay if you're not okay. Really makes a huge difference in the lives of the women around you, and it builds stronger connections and relationships, and it really makes a difference when moving forward from anything, positive or negative.
Mhm. Thanks, Courtney. What about you? Have you got any advice for dads out there?
Yeah, similar to Courtney, yeah, just for them to talk about their emotions. My relationship with my dad, I could say quite neutral. I mean, he does show a lot through his actions. For example, he came to a foreign country and he did start a business, which has pushed me to achieve my dreams. And in my culture, like, women are like meant to stay home and stuff like that. But my dad has given me the opportunity to want to attend school, achieve my dreams, which is really motivated me in life. And yeah, I feel like for dads out there, just talk to your daughter, you know, be close with them, communicate with them, and yeah, build a relationship.
Mm. Azra, I'd like to stay with you for a moment now, because you and I had a really good discussion about some of your frustrations around media stereotypes in African youth. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit more about that, and how you see it and how it impacts you, but also how it's led to what you're going to study when you finish year 12.
The media has negatively portrayed the Sudanese community, and most likely never shows the good things the Sudanese community does and the women of the community, which is very upsetting most times. Since the media has mainly shown gang and gang violence and young women also going down that same path, has led me to want to change in the criminal justice system. Because most people are not dealing with the situations, but are rather like overlooking it. I'd also like to study criminal law and hopefully become a criminal defense lawyer and create a positive change in the legal justice system and tackle the issues being faced rather than putting them aside. Yeah.
That's amazing, Azza. It's so inspiring to see you actually take action, so that you can change the system through your study and your career later in life. We're going to talk a little bit about social media now as well. And Jazzy, social media, both in relation to some of the trolling and the harassment that happens of women, but also this can happen, of course, in the school corridors as well. And Jazzy, you've spoken to me about the issue of slut shaming for girls. Can you explain what slut shaming is and how it impacts young women and girls?
Sure. So slut shaming is the act of stigmatizing women or anyone who appears as a woman, who identifies or just even looks like one. Can also apply to males for their sexual acts. So anyone who seems typically over sexual or in an unconventional sense as like hypersexual and sexually liberated, then yeah, so they're shamed for it. And sorry, what was the second part of your question?
How does that impact on girls and young women?
Oh yeah, well, it confuses them first and foremost, because here we are told to, you know, be comfortable as a woman, and we're told to love ourselves. We're told to learn how to gain confidence and be comfortable in the skin that we're given. And then when we are comfortable in it and we choose to take control of it and we choose to empower ourselves in ways that are most comfortable to us, then we're told that we're doing something wrong and we're actually inhumane, and we're demoralized for expressing ourselves in our most comfortable form. So I think it's very confusing. It puts young girls especially in a position of confusion. I don't know. They just don't know where to go, what to do, how to be. Like, they try to listen to all the advice that's given to them, and when people are like, you need to gain more confidence and you need to stand your ground as a woman in particular.
Mm.
And we're just disparaged for it. So we just don't know where to go.
Mhm. And of course, we see a lot of this happening on social media now. And often they're just assumptions about women's behaviour, and they can be incorrect as well. But research, there's research on social media use that shows that it is closely linked to depression for girls, much more so than boys. So Jazzy, maybe, and others, if you'd like to contribute, how's social media impacting girls and young women today? And in particular, I'm interested to learn more about emerging apps like the OnlyFans app. Is that something that's empowering for young women, or is it disturbing? And you might want to actually explain what it is so that people watching who may not have heard about it before can understand a little bit more.
So in response to the first half of your question, it's affecting young girls. Social media is affecting the young girls and increasing depression by because they're so open to, or they're so accessible to like different content, and often girls are on there and photoshopping pictures, or they're living lives that, you know, you aspire to live one day but you're not in it, so you're always bringing yourself down. You're always comparing. A lot of young females, even a lot of young males actually, just a lot of young people spend a lot of time scrolling just so that they can sit there and compare themselves and their lives to other people's, when in reality it's just not it. Like it's just content for the internet. And there have been a lot of instances where like a lot of influencers and a lot of people have been called out on social media for pretending. So they're on there and they've posted photos of what looks like them purchasing tens of thousands of dollars worth of luxury items when they're really just empty boxes. Like there's a lot of a lot of people are starting to break down like the realities of social media and how it's super damaging, because like they're out there portraying a lifestyle and or like a whole figure, and it's just not accurate. And for emerging apps like OnlyFans actually has been around for a long time, but artists used to use it, well, they still do, use it for exclusive content. So whenever they wanted to drop an album before the general public got it, they would put it up on OnlyFans, or they would put songs up there that never made it to the record label, just so that the real hardcore fans would get that content. However, it is now being used as a sex work platform predominantly. So a lot of people are on there, both males and females, and they're uploading content that is sexual. It's just them up there being provocative. And you have to have an ID, so you do have to upload your ID, so you can't get on there underage, but it doesn't mean that the content can't be seen elsewhere. Like if you log onto Twitter, you can see the content there if someone else has uploaded it or anything. But yeah, they're using that to make money off of their own content. And when you ask if it's more empowering or if it's the complete opposite, I personally think that it is super paradoxical, because again, it puts women in particular, it puts sex workers, in control of their content, in control of their bodies, in control of the image that they're trying to portray. However, again, it makes you super susceptible to all the bullying that comes with it, all the disparaging that comes with the community, all the disappointment that could come from all different angles in your life. And it could be difficult when you do, like, people have expressed that it has become difficult to like apply for a job, and they're like, where have you been, like what have you been doing the past year or two? And the only thing that you can put on your resume is nothing really, because like it's not an actual job. It's kind of like a side hustle, but still a lot of people are making really big money off of it. And that's what's appealing to it, because it's easy, you're in control, you get to work whenever you want, you get to do, like, put out whatever content you want. And if you're good enough at even marketing yourself like that, then you'll be able to bring in a lot more money than you would if you were working 40 hours a week for the whole year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's, for me, it's a little bit of like, there's not enough research around it yet to say that it's super bad or it's super good. Like, because it puts you in a position where you're like, yeah, I'm in control and I'm empowered. Like, you've put me in this position to get me comfortable with my own body, and now I'm here doing it, and there are people paying for it. So, like, I don't know, it's kind of like, is it wrong if I'm providing entertainment? Is it not wrong? Because I don't know, there's just so many questions around it. And then open to you guys.
Yeah, I definitely see what Jazzy's trying to say, because now we're trying to encourage women to be comfortable in themselves, but then at the same time we still have those restrictions, because like Jazzy mentioned, like during our rehearsal, like the world society is not ready for like what like we have to offer, or like how much we want to liberate ourselves. So I think it's like a work in progress. So probably for the time being, just being aware of the dangers at the moment, but like somehow still be able to stand up for yourself and still like be comfortable with who you are, and not let, like, the hardest thing sometimes is trying not to let other people tell you otherwise, because you're perfect the way you are. Like, as girls, like we're powerful, like we're amazing beings, and I believe that's something that, you know, we should take to heart. So like, try not to be discouraged. I mean, if it feels that way, there's people like lots of us, like us, who like believe in you, believe what you have to offer, believe that you're beautiful. So yeah, so it is a bit tricky. So it's just about like researching, like knowing what you're getting into and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Renee. I think a big thing is educate yourself. Like, make a risk assessment and work out whether the choice that you're going to be making is worth it in every aspect of your life. In terms of if you are wanting to do something, do a risk assessment to work out how it may or may not affect your mental health or your emotional stability or your physical safety. And I think really just raise your awareness of yourself and the potential pros and cons that come with the choices that you make. And I think the other thing is, like, everybody can get offended by everything. Some people can get offended by some things. A lot of people may not get offended by a lot of things. Like, it's about how you choose to view content, and if you choose to look at it, and if you choose to see things, and if you make the decision to go and like view something or be a part of something, then you can't. For me, I think it's my thinking is, if you've put in the effort to go and look at something, to go and be a part of something, but you don't agree with it, that's on you, because you've decided to join. You weren't forced. That wasn't forced on you. So don't be offended if you click on something to look at something and you don't like it. You've made that decision to look at it knowing what it was. So keep your opinions to yourself if it's not necessary to pass that opinion on and put that out there.
Mm-hmm.
That's just me when it comes to social media.
I really like your point, Courtney, about doing that risk assessment and thinking about how would it impact you now, but how might it impact you later in life as well. Thinking about your mental health and your emotional stability. I'm just going to some of the questions that are being asked by the audience here. And Azza, we might come back to you if that's okay. I've got a question here. If there's something you'd like to see change for the future, what would it be?
Change, I guess, more programs for like youths, like around. More advice on like rights that people have, like legal rights, because I feel like most people don't understand their legal rights, which is a big issue. And yeah, I think that's like 2 key changes I'd like to see.
That's great. What about you, Pep?
Yes, it's kind of the same thing, like empowering programs that really allow like males and females to grow, that like equal, like they're both equal. And just to open the options for females, like we were talking about during like VCE, feeling restricted to do certain things. So I feel like schools should like leave it open for us to choose. So just give us all the options that are available to males as well as us.
Another question from the audience here. You're all inspirational young women and offer so much hope for the future. It's been a tough time for young adults with this long-term social isolation and loneliness. How have you managed your mental health during this time? Thanks to Courtney, who's already shared a little bit about that, but maybe Jazzy, what about you?
Me? Okay, actually, I have a very contrasting story to Courtney's, because I very selfishly was almost grateful that we got a break. That is not to disregard the severity of the situation and the pandemic, but it really did like give me a break, because for a long time I was just struggling. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just in a constant battle. Like every day I was just waking up like, yeah, it's another day and I don't know what I'm going to do, and I don't know where I'm going to go, and I don't know where I'm going to end up. But when we finally all got a break, I felt like we were all on the same level. Like I was no longer under any pressure to do something or be something, because I really I just got time. Like we were all at the same spot. Like this is to go back on the last question, actually, where I was going to say, we always talk about having equality in the world, where we should really talk more about equity, because, you know, it's all good and well to offer the opportunities, but to really be able to bring on people with the right equipment makes all of a difference. And I think that's what really helped when we went into the first lockdown. It was just knowing, for me, it was very settling to know that everyone was at the same level as me. We were all in the same sort of, I do not wish this upon anybody, and I really hate that we did struggle together, but it was almost comforting in a sense. And I really just rewired my brain to be like, just take a break. Just take a break. I'm still too young to be stressed out like this. Take a break. And I think that is one thing as well, is like every day I wake up and I really try to avoid stressing out about anything. And if there's anything I can do the night before, like if I can go to bed with complete peace, I'll do it. So if it means that I need to put my laundry away before going to bed so that I can wake up knowing that there's no laundry to do, and that's one thing I've got like taken off my list, then I'll do it. It's all a matter of preparation, I guess, and just knowing yourself, like, and understanding your body. I think if you know that something's going to be too overwhelming or too overbearing, then just take a step back, reevaluate, have a look and see if there's anything else you can do to make the situation a lot easier for yourself, because like this thing is huge and it's so out of our control. So I was like, if the whole world has been shaken. There's no point in me sitting here at home rocking my own world, my little bubble. I can't do that to myself, because then it's one more worry. It's one more worry for not only me, but everyone around me. And I didn't want to do that. Couldn't do that.
Thank you for sharing that, Jazzy. I think that's really good advice around taking a break. Something that I often tell myself is slow down to go faster. And that's really helpful for me. We are coming to the end of our session now, and I'd really like to wrap up our conversation by asking each of you to sum up in a quick sentence, what's the advice that you'd give to your younger self? And we might start with Courtney.
Trust your gut. Trust your gut instincts. If it doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. And stop letting yourself be bothered by what others think, because they're probably just as worried about what you or everybody else thinks of them, when really none of us actually really, when we get down to it, really care what each other is doing. We don't, I mean, as an adult now, I'm very aware of that everyone's just living their life. And I think social media, have a break, turn it off. You don't need it. It's not something that you have to have. You can live without it. You are going to be okay. It does get better, and it's not the end of your life when you're, if someone hasn't commented or liked a picture or a post or something, it's not, that's instant gratification. It's not long-lasting satisfaction.
Thanks, Courtney. Azza, what about you? What would you tell your 13-year-old self?
To not stress about life, have fun, enjoy your time, and to not listen to social norms and not to, be influenced by them, and to chase your dreams. For example, I currently started my first YouTube video channel, which I'm very proud of, and just enjoy everything, I guess.
Wow, I can't wait to check out that YouTube channel. You'll have to send us the details. Jazzy, a quick sentence?
I would just let my younger self know that it's going to be okay. Every decision you make from here on out will turn out to be all right. And also to maybe change my language a little earlier, I would probably say to, instead of being I can't or I won't, or I don't want to do this, or change it to I will, I want to, I can, because it makes all the world of a difference in your very daily life.
That's great, Jazzy. And Pep, we started with you and we'll finish with you today. What's your one sentence?
It's okay to be who you are, because you're unique. So embrace the person you were created to be and be empowered. Ding.
That's lovely. I'd like to say a huge thank you to our panelists, Azza, Jazzy, Pep and Courtney, for sharing all your experiences today. You really are a truly remarkable group of young women, and we know that you are the future leaders of our communities, and not just our communities, of our country. And I was really interested to hear some of your views on topics like body image and social media and violence. These are certainly very important issues to young women that need to be talked about a lot more. Before we close today, I'd like to hand over to the Deputy Chair of the Les Twentyman Foundation, Ros Andrews. Ros and her family have been well-respected members of Melbourne's business community for many decades. Ros has been involved as a volunteer with lots of organisations over the years, and she first began working with us almost 20 or over 20 years ago on our Back to School program. Ros is also a dedicated trustee of the Ujuma Foundation, which runs a children's home in Tanzania set up by her daughter, Carly. Over to you, Ros.
Thank you, Renee. Those kind words. I would very much like, with pleasure, say thank you to the young women who've been here today speaking with us on behalf of the Board of Directors and the team at the Les Twentyman Foundation. I'd like to thank each one of them for their contribution. I have found it fantastic, and I'm sure everybody who's been watching has been too. This event was titled Embrace Her Voice, and that's exactly what we have done here today. Together, we have made time to listen to the voices of young women in our community, to hear about the issues that are important to them. In their own way, they've helped us to understand the barriers that many young people, many young women experience while growing up. At the same time, however, they've also given us hope that we can support them to greater future through programs such as Embrace. I'd also like to say thank you to everybody in the audience for joining us. We trust that today's discussion has given some insights into how we can all make a contribution to improve the lives of girls and young women in our community. If you would like to support the work of the Les Twentyman Foundation, please visit our website and at www.ltfoundation.com.au to make a donation. Enjoy the rest of the weekend, and happy International Day of the Girl.